Hola a todos, ¿qué tal? Bienvenidos a una nueva edición de nuestros programas. This time, we are going to have our amazing Dr. Queinnise Miller doing a presentation that is part of our bilingual program. Hi, Dr. Miller.
Hello, ¿cómo estás? Hola, ¿qué tal?
Muy bien, bienvenida aquí de nuevo. Yes, podemos hablar en inglés y en español, but because of this master's is in bilingual education, okay, we are going to focus only in English, but at the end you're going to have our emails. It doesn't matter if you are going to email us in English or in Spanish, okay, en inglés o en español, las preguntas al final, ¿de acuerdo? Entonces vamos a empezar con nuestro video. But first, tell us something about you, Dr. Miller.
Well, first of all, thank you so much. I'm excited to be here. I am a passionate educator for almost 20 years now. My love is children, specifically all children, but my focus area are culturally, linguistically, and economically diverse scholars. That is my passion in giving them the education that they deserve, giving them the education that is the absolute best, so that they can compete and so that they can be successful, not just academically, but also in their lives. So I have two beautiful children, and I love this work, and I'm committed and dedicated to partnering with people like you, Francisco, and making sure that we are creating environments and classrooms that are adequate and what they need to be for our babies. So thank you. I'm so glad to be here today.
Thank you. The title for the presentation of today is Culturally Responsive Learning Styles. And this is part of the master's degree in Innovative Bilingual Education and Multicultural Studies provided by EXDINTRA, Innovative Training Company, and la Universidad a Distancia de Madrid. Okay, so Dr. Miller, tell us about what the research tell us about this, about the cultural responsiveness in education.
So essentially, Francisco, we are a very diverse world. We are a diverse nation, and classrooms all over the country are diverse. And because of this wonderful diversity, it's important that we are teaching and meeting the needs of our scholars who come from diverse backgrounds. And like I said earlier, those diverse backgrounds are different. It could be ethnicity, it could be cultural background, it could be class, it could be linguistic differences. So essentially, culturally responsive teaching is basically keeping that in mind, keeping that diversity in mind, and making sure that we're making instruction and learning relevant for all learners. It's unfortunate that historically, education was not built in a way to address the needs of all of these learners. So culturally responsive teaching and culturally responsive pedagogy does that with diverse learners in mind.
That's why we have you here, Dr. Miller, in order to throw some light. Vamos a continuar.
Okay.
What is it about the learning styles of our students? Tell us about something about this.
Okay, so everyone knows and has heard of learning styles. We know that some people learn through looking through visual modes of learning. Some people need to hear it. I need to see it, right? I cannot understand it if I can't see it. And so some need to hear, some need to see, some need to actually do it. They need to be tactile. They've got to have their hands in it for the concepts to be learned and to be understood. So those are the learning styles that everyone pretty much knows, and everyone has different ones. What's your learning style, Francisco?
Mine, I'm more visual. And as a pre-K, former bilingual pre-K teacher, I love hands-on and
Ooh.
manipulatives. Yes.
Yeah, you are a special, special man, pre-K. That
Uh-huh.
you have a special place in heaven, Francisco, pre-K teacher.
Thank you. You too, because you are a principal in a middle school.
Oh,
How can you see the different type of learning styles of your students on your campus?
well, middle school is a little different because their brains aren't very normal. So they have, depending on the day, they go from needing to see it to needing to hear it because of the developmental stages that they're in, similar to those pre-K babies, right?
Oh, yes. Tell me
But so
about it.
I know, right? But those learning styles, while some people prefer, one style over the other, unfortunately, information doesn't always come in that manner. And so we have to be able to fluidly go in between different learning styles so that we can get concepts. Let me give you an example. In college, I remember, when I got there and it was lecture, 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 here, here, here. And I didn't always get the visuals that I needed. And I had to be able you know, um, to adapt to those things. And I'll be honest, it was very difficult sometimes because of how you learn is how you learn. And so, yes, so it depends on those middle school kids. It
Yes,
depends with us all, actually.
yeah, I totally agree. And now with the COVID-19 pandemics, when all the situation in education moved to online, I mean, this is very important to know how to address all the learning styles of our students. But we're going to continue because
Vamos a continuar.
vamos a continuar porque here you want to share with us this amazing book. I mean, I know that you told me privately about this amazing book and all these ideas that you have is based on mainly on this book. Isn't it true?
Definitely. So I had an opportunity to work with an amazing professor while getting my doctorate degree, Dr. Tyrone Tanner, and he wrote this book, Culturally Responsive Educational Theories. And this is one of the texts that I will be using in the master's program as we really dive into culturally responsive pedagogy. And so within this book, and what I would like to just give a very small glimpse into it today is around learning styles, because while we know the three basic learning styles, there's also a level, an area of learning styles that has to do with environment and how children of diverse all children
Background.
really, but diverse backgrounds are able to be successful and to access content. So I'm really excited to just give a small glimpse into this book, and I hope that our viewers decide to potentially be a part of this program so that we can really dive deep into it.
Yeah, for sure. And this information is critical nowadays. And thank you for sharing all your ideas. Let's start.
Okay.
What's the field independent?
So field independent is actually a learning, it's not a learning style, it's a environment. It's something that a so both field independent and these two learning styles that I'm going to discuss today basically means that this learner is not dependent, they are independent of the learning environment around them. Meaning, it doesn't matter who the teacher is, they're still going to access learning. It doesn't matter if they are learning in a box with no pictures, with just four walls. They are still going to be able to access learning because the environment around them is not important. So I like to use this visual. Mickey Mouse could be in the classroom and they're still going to be able to be successful because they don't rely on the field or the environment to be able to be successful. So Mickey Mouse can be their teacher. They can have subs. They can have multiple teachers. They could learn outside. They can learn inside. It doesn't matter what's going on around them. Okay. They are independent within their space, that they don't need anything to help them be successful around them.
Okay. Thank you. Let's see what's the field dependent.
So field dependent, or you'll also hear me say field sensitive. They are sensitive to the environment and everything in it. They're sensitive. It makes a difference. Everything connects. You know, this visual where you see all these connecting, kind of like the brain of a woman, right? Everything connects for us. You know, the stove is connected to the food, which is connected to the child, which is connected to my stomach, which is connected to what I did today, which is connected to how I felt. Like all those connections, right? Everything matters. And so I love this visual where the woman's like, you know, where this one said, it doesn't matter. And then the other one's like, oh, but it does matter,
But it does.
right? It does matter. And
Yeah.
so this is a theory or a concept that says you can't just bring this content to this child, because they will not necessarily connect with the content if they can't connect with other things in the environment to help bring them to the content.
Good. Now we have the definition of these two categories. What can we do for them?
So I'm going to say this again. This is going to be a very quick dive into these two concepts. And so I really hope that people are interested in coming to learn more. So let's start with the scholar to scholar interaction, the kid to kid, the student to student interaction. For those scholars that are field independent, remember, they do not need anything to be successful. They like to work alone, right? So when they are going to compete, and they want to make sure that they are doing everything that they need to do to be able to be successful, and it's very intrinsic. And I'll say that most of our not all, most scholars or children that come from, you know, wealthy backgrounds where this type of thinking is instilled in them, they are sometimes feel independent, right? They're very task oriented. They don't really care about their friends, what their friends are doing, what their friends are not doing, because they're laser focused in, right? Because all of what they need comes from within them. Okay. So you compare that to a field sensitive scholar, and they are really like, you know what? They like to work in teams. You know, I don't want to just do my work. I want to work with a group. I want to work with a team. They love like games so that the team, the whole group can learn. They like to help other people, right? You know, they don't want to just be by themselves. They want to help. They want to support. And they're super sensitive to the feelings of other people. The social interactions matter, right? Think about middle school.
Yes, and this is very important, especially for dual language learners, that they are going to work with their language buddies. And it's very important, the last part that you mentioned here in your presentation, that is really impacted by the teacher. I mean, and I wanted to tell the future participants in our masters what are they going to learn in order to help those field sensitive students?
So I'll be honest with you. It's important to understand this concept, because you sometimes have teachers who are not very field sensitive within themselves. And we'll talk a little bit about that in just a little bit. But the field sensitive scholar who historically, and if you look at statistics, are typically culturally diverse, Black, brown, you know, they come from a different culture. They speak a different language. They come from a much more lower socioeconomic family. The relationships are critical to their success.
Yeah.
These scholars, they have to have community. And culturally, as an African American woman, community and family is very important. Lo mismo está en los familias hispanos. It's
Así es.
very important. The family and the community is what drives us. And so when a scholar that comes from that type of background goes into a classroom with someone that, you know, in a system or in a space that does not celebrate and that does not provide opportunities for that to occur, it has a negative impact on them being able to successfully access the content academically.
Good. Thank you for this amazing explanation. Let's continue to know more about this, a closer look at the field sensitive, sensitive and field independent learners.
Right. So just going a little deeper again, please take this class because there's so many layers to unfold here. But I feel independent learners, they're analytical. They need you to just tell them what to do, when to do it, and how to do it, and you can walk away. They are very, very step by step. They need paper, they need highlighters. They're very the way that they process is just, oh, you know what? You know how you have right brain and left brain? You know, I forget which one. One is real artsy, one is real analytical. Your field independent learners are those that are just super analytical and, you know, they're very by the book, right? Whereas your field sensitive learners, they're more global, they're visionaries. I am a completely field sensitive. If I go somewhere and I don't like the person doesn't like me, I don't like the teacher, or it's cold in there, or, you know, we're not talking about how we're going to save the world. Like, I sometimes shut down because they like humor, they need stories, they need to work in groups and doing role plays, and like things have to be engaging for them to connect to the content.
So
Now,
it's
there's
very
no
important. Sorry, I have one question. What you were talking about is that, so it's very important for teachers to know there are different types of personalities and interests and likes.
it's so important. And I always suggest that my teachers do an assessment at the beginning of the year to identify how and where and what. And in this class, I actually have access to a survey that teachers can use to determine where their kids, where they fall on the scale of not just their auditory, visual, and kinesthetic, but are they more field independent or are they more field sensitive?
Good, amazing. Now, talking about teachers, I ask you, and voila, here we are.
And voila! So the teaching is very important. There's a statistic that 90% of scholars that are in schools, most of them are field sensitive, field dependent. And 90% of teachers are actually, they teach in a field independent or field sensitive way.
Interesting.
Ooh, that's
Mhm.
big, right? Have
Yeah.
you ever heard a teacher say, you know, I just want them to come in and sit down and do their work? Yeah, you have some kids that will do that. But the kids that don't do that, that's nothing wrong with them. They just need a different environment to be able to connect, because it's not that those scholars don't want to learn. It's those scholars need environmental support to learn. But the same is true for a field independent learner. It's frustrating to have a teacher like me, right? And I want to do stories and I want to be engaged and I want to sing songs and I want to group. When I'm a field independent learner, that could be overwhelming. It's like, please just let me work by myself. And I'm like, we're grouping. Well, no, that's not what they need. So it's important for teachers to understand, who am I teaching? How do they learn? What type of environments do they need? And then what type of teacher am I? Because as the teacher, as the professor, as the person that is responsible for providing instruction, I have to be able to shift my teaching to address the needs of all of my learners. So should you have a field sensitive, field dependent classroom only? No. Should you have a field independent classroom only? No. It's important to balance those and to specifically meet the needs of those scholars. So this is really important. Like some teachers that are field independent, like they like to lecture, they have their activities, they're going to stick to their activities. They will guide the student, but they give very direct feedback because they get to the learning, right?
Yeah.
Versus a field sensitive teacher, they're warm, they're kind, they want to know how their day was, how your kid's day was. We want to talk about whether or not why did Johnny break up with Susie? Well, are you okay? Well, like that teacher takes time to care about those things that have nothing to do with academics, because it's going to help the child be able to learn better.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think that this is something that everybody likes. But let me ask you a question, because you're talking everything about the students' feedback to the teacher. But for example, in my case with the pre-K or other potential participants in this master that they are teaching with I mean with groups with young students like first graders or second graders, that they cannot provide them with that information. So how do you get information about these field sensitive characteristics of your students? Are
That's
you
a
talking
great
to parents? Are you how are you doing that?
That is a great question. And I think that you hit it, Francisco. You are a great pre-K teacher. You ask questions. You ask questions that are appropriate for the level in which of the scholars that you're teaching, right? So, and you ask parents, what do they like? How do they like to learn, right? What are some of the things that how do they prefer to learn? Asking kids, do you want to work by yourself or would you like to work with Johnny? Right? And if every time they want to work with Johnny, then okay, this one may be a little bit more field sensitive. And so it's just very, very, and if you research and look up like different surveys, learning style surveys, they have them for every single level of the scholars that we serve. And so in this class, I have more tips and I have more information around how do you determine where children fall, and then what are some of the tips, because I can give you this information, but there's actually strategies and things to do to be able to address the needs of both of these learners.
Wow, that's so exciting. I can't wait to see one of your classes for sure. Oh, wow. Now, motivation. Tell us about motivating students.
So again, your field independent scholar, they really are self-motivated. They will, they may not want to, they don't need awards. They don't necessarily need, big, to-dos about what they do with their grades. They want to do well, and they're able to motivate themselves. And so, but a field sensitive, oh my goodness, you've got to praise them, give them leadership roles, give them awards, give them structures to work in, inspire them, motivate them. I wrote a book, Mr. Francisco, about how I had to motivate and inspire my kids so that they could connect to my content, because it's not easy to do, but it's not impossible. There's just simple things that teachers could do to really get kids to run through a wall for them. But it's just the teacher and educators, we've got to be mindful and be strategic in identifying what those things are and getting to know our kids. You've got to get to know them. You've got to get to know
Totalmente de acuerdo. No puedo estar más de acuerdo. I
them.
agree with you. Yeah.
De
Because
acuerdo.
Because motivation is key in the learning process, and we teachers, we are involved in this process as well. We need to do our best for them. I mean, not only as students, as our future citizens, you know.
Yes, I feel like it's our responsibility.
Yeah,
It's
I
our
agree.
responsibility. And what's interesting is that the teacher-scholar relationship is much more impactful than even the relationships that they have with their parents. They believe us. And when we tell them that they can do it, when we tell them that we believe in them, when we motivate them the way they need motivation, they will do things that will surpass even our expectations of them. So it's very important. You're right.
Yeah. Okay, so here we have it all boils down to this.
What does it boil down to, Francisco? You can read that for me.
Oh, okay, as we have the video here, let me move it a little bit. Uh, if scholars are not learning the way we teach, we must teach the way they learn. So, Dr. Miller, thank you very much for for being here with us for this amazing presentation as part of this master's degree. Muchas
Thank
gracias a todos por estar aquí. And again, si tienes cualquier pregunta, por favor, envíanos un email a info@exdintra.com. Para más información, escríbanos a www.exdintra.com. And before saying goodbye, Dr. Miller, do you want to tell us something about the audience and the potential students or our masters?
I just want to say, continue to push yourselves to love children and to learn more about what it is that we can do to create classrooms that are much more culturally responsive and meeting the needs of our diverse learners in this diverse world. Espero que nos vemos prontito
Pronto.
en la clase y muchas gracias por viniendo aquí y mirando a nuestro video. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, Dr. Miller. Y los demás, por favor, síganos también en las redes sociales para tener más información. Además, este PowerPoint estará a su disposición si nos escribe a info@exdintra.com. Thank you very much.
Gracias. Nos
Dr.
vemos.
Miller, thank you. Y nos vemos pronto.
Adiós.
Adiós.